Hello, I'm BMillzebub and welcome to my channel. It's been discussed in interviews before, but I wanted to do a more in-depth explanation of my journey to and from Catholicism. So, how did I become Catholic initially? How did I manage to get out of the religion? Let's talk about that. Like I said, I've been interviewed a few times on other channels where I told my deconversion story, but interviews are often scattered, and I figured I could tell the story here where I can focus on just the one thing. I was born, baptized, and raised Catholic, as many Catholics are. I can't remember being baptized, obviously, since I was still just a baby, but in the years since, I would go to church and Sunday school, the usual attempts at indoctrination. I hated both, but who could blame me? I was a little kid. I wanted to spend my Sundays watching TV, playing, or sleeping, not at church. I'd protest occasionally, and eventually my parents cut me a deal. If I'd go to Sunday school, I wouldn't have to go to church afterward. In part, I think the deal got made because my parents didn't want to go to Mass twice a Sunday which is what they were doing. You see, Sunday school took place when the 10 a.m. Mass was happening, and since my parents were already there, that's when they'd go. And Sunday school let out in time to make it to noon Mass, and that's when my sister and I would go to church. For obvious reasons, my sister and I took that deal and just went to Sunday school. I don't really remember when I stopped going to Sunday school. Eventually, you just get too old for it. I just don't remember what the age cutoff is for my church, or was. But eventually, I did stop going to Sunday school, and obviously, that deal wasn't a thing anymore. So I had to start going to church again. Sunday school was tedious enough because during the week I was in real class at a real school that taught real things, which at the time was boring enough. Church was much worse for me. At least at school we'd occasionally talk about something interesting. That was pretty much never the case at church. Church was always excruciatingly boring to me. Even the homily where the priest had room to talk directly to the congregation was boring. Sometime around 7th or 8th grade, I started trying out witchcraft. A few friends of mine were doing it, and I wanted to try it out to see if it worked. I tried for several months, but nothing came of it, and I came to the conclusion that there must be nothing to it. It didn't take me long to consider the idea that maybe the God I was brought up to worship was as absent from reality as the magic I tried to practice. It was around the time that I was considering the thought that God didn't actually exist that I started protesting going to church again. It worked with Sunday school, so why wouldn't it work now? Well, in my infinite lack of wisdom as a child, I let it slip that I was questioning the existence of God to my parents. In retrospect, it's no surprise that saying that backfired on me so badly. To the good fortune of my parents, but not as much for me, a youth ministry had started at my church sometime in the years previous for high schoolers. I was about to be finished with 8th grade and go to high school, which would make me eligible for the program. With this in mind, my dad took me to meet with the leader of the youth ministry. I wasn't at all interested, and it showed all throughout the meeting. So, much like before with Sunday school, my parents cut me a deal. If I gave this youth ministry a chance and didn't like it, I wouldn't have to go anymore. I think it was a pretty fair deal. I'd almost definitely have to go to church still, but I wouldn't have to go to any of the events this youth group was doing. So I took it. Considering my lack of interest, you'd assume that I wouldn't enjoy the program at all. But something interesting happened. For the first time in my life, I had social acceptance. I was never a really popular kid before then. My parents didn't have the money to get me the cool clothes, and I've always been a bit socially awkward. And actually, my social awkwardness kind of sticks around to this day. But after joining this group, I had the acceptance that had never been there before. And it's amazing what acceptance into a group will do. Over my 4 years of high school, I went very quickly, almost disturbingly quickly, from being someone seriously doubting the existence of God to more or less being a religious zealot. I was not a nice person while I was religious. I hated people for immutable characteristics such as their sexuality and actively tried to take away their rights. Same with a woman's right to choose. You know the Right to Life march that happens annually in DC? Yeah, I was on the wrong side of one of those one year. But if you want a look into how I was as a Catholic, I'll have the link to the atheist flashback I did on Grey Skeptic's channel some time ago down in the description. But let's not dwell on how shitty of a person I used to be and move forward to after I graduated high school and wasn't able to stay in the program anymore. The indoctrination stuck for a while. I kept going to church and occasionally proselytizing. At some point, I was asked to help bring someone back to the church. I agreed, obviously. Call it a mix of religious fervor and my own vanity, but I agreed. This is where some really big cracks started to form. You see, the guy I was asked to help bring back to the church was an atheist. He didn't go to some other religion. He left religion behind entirely. The cracks started to form when he asked me some questions. Simple questions, really. Questions that, despite me giving an answer, itched at the back of my mind. The usual religious platitudes I expected to be good enough for everyone else, I was realizing weren't good enough for me. Eventually, the metaphorical dam started to crack, and I found myself questioning whether I believed in the existence of God yet again. But I'd invested so much time and effort into being Catholic, I didn't want to just drop it. So I spent the next year or two trying to prove that I was following the right system of belief. Trying to prove, if only to myself, that God really existed. I failed. But from that failure, I came to the conclusion that the God of the Bible didn't exist, couldn't exist. My previous experience with magic not working led me to see no reason that any other God existed either. The only word left to describe my beliefs was atheist. Strangely enough, though, I managed to skip over the angry atheist phase. You know the one, where for a while we're angry about being lied to for so long and the indoctrination we suffered under. I mean, eventually I did go through it. It was a bit on the delayed side, though. But that's the story of how I went from religious but apathetic to seriously questioning religion to being a religious zealot and finally to atheism. If you enjoyed the video, please leave it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the notification bell to get notified every time I upload a new video. If you feel so inclined to help me out, consider supporting me on Patreon, where I have monthly patron-only live streams, or consider getting me something from my Amazon wish list. Every little bit helps, and every little bit is greatly appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, linked below, to keep up with all my comings and goings, and join my Discord for a chance to talk to yours truly. Take it easy, everyone, and I'll see you all in the next one.